We have sound. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you very much for being with us today. It's my great pleasure to moderate this session with a fantastic lineup of very insightful speakers. We hope to take you through a series of perspectives over the next half hour that will prove insightful, but also thought-provoking and motivational. So, I'm Emma Clark. I'm the Senior Private Sector Advisor for WaterAid. We are an international NGO. Our mission is that everyone, everywhere, should have access to clean water, decent toilets, and good hygiene. In order to do that, we need water. It's a no-brainer. So, we need to work with others in order to do that in contexts where it's a challenge, like here in Bangladesh and in the apparel sector. So we've heard how important the apparel sector is for Bangladesh's economy and how significant it is for the growth of Bangladesh and for the apparel sector. But that is dependent on an increasingly challenged resource, particularly on groundwater. Now, the apparel sector in Bangladesh currently extracts 1.5 billion meter cubes per annum, which at a cost of £4 billion to extract. That's about 25% over-extraction, so extracting more than is naturally replenished each year. And that means that the groundwater is falling by 2.5 meters a year. So if you combine an accelerated rate of falling groundwater levels with increased extraction due to the growth of industry and conflict with the decarbonization agenda, you can see it's a big threat to business growth, to continuity, and to drinking water supply. Not to mention the contamination of surface water supplies through effluent. So, our objective today is to elevate the conversation around sustainable water management in the apparel sector, to address the critical issues of groundwater depletion, environmental sustainability, surface water contamination, and how this impacts on the provision of wash facilities and improved wash practices. We want to galvanize stakeholders to recognize the importance of sustainable water usage and to collaborate on effective strategies to ensure the long-term viability of the apparel sector while safeguarding water resources and public well-being. So, with that, I will introduce our wonderful panel. Prashun Bhattacharya, Professor of Sustainable Development, Environmental Science and Engineering at the KTH Royal Institute of Technology in Stockholm. Ashna Hug, Director of Incredible Fashions Limited. Oh, you changed spaces. Mustafizur Rahman, Climate and Environment Portfolio Manager for the Embassy of Sweden. And Qazi Mohammed Iqbal Hussain, Climate Actions Lead, Global Supply Chain for Lindex. So each of our panelists will give you some perspective on their part in this equation, and then we will look to combine and see where the opportunities are to collaborate going forwards. So firstly, Ashna, what are the water challenges facing factory owners, especially those with vertically integrated supply chains? And what is driving businesses like Incredible Fashions Limited to invest in sustainable water management?
Thank you, Emma, and thank you to the organizers. It's really an honor to be here. So unfortunately, as you've already highlighted, apparel production demands a significant amount of water consumption. The amount of water used by the industry is truly staggering. According to the IFC, the textile wet processing industry in Bangladesh consumes around 1,500 billion liters of water annually to process around 5 million tons of fabric, and much of this, of course, is extracted from groundwater sources. So one of our major challenges is around resource mapping. We know that there's a significant amount of groundwater depletion, especially in the industrial areas where, with high concentrations of textile wet processing units, but there's limited understanding about how much water is actually available to us. So this proves challenging because it's a threat to our long-term sustainability, as of course water is an essential resource for our business operations, and we're currently extracting it without consideration for this fact. Another challenge is that effective water management mechanisms require enormous investment. While there are many manufacturers that have either the resources or at least access to the resources to take on these initiatives, there are many that don't. Effluent treatment plants, or ETPs, are very expensive to purchase and install, but also very expensive to operate. However, the regulatory environment very rightfully demands use of these systems. So there's a significant opportunity here for a multi-stakeholder approach because this is a multi-stakeholder problem. For instance, options to expand centralized ETPs in industrial areas needs to be explored. So the reason at IFL that we've invested so heavily in sustainable water management is first because we really do believe in our responsibility to our workers, to our community and our environment. And secondly, we know and understand that it's imperative to the longevity of our business and the industry that we effectively manage the resources that our company relies on.
Thank you, Ashna. Incredible Fashions Limited has shown significant leadership by investing in sustainable water management and improved wash. Can you tell us a bit about the impact that this has had on your business?
Yeah, thank you. So from our perspective, there's a direct link between sustainable water usage practices and profitability. And as a result, it's an integral part of our business strategy. So we work on a project with our partners at Lindex and WaterAid to harvest rainwater for use in various operations around the factory. This, of course, reduces some of our reliance on groundwater sources, but also depending on rainfall, it allows us to recharge some of our groundwater aquifers. Last year, for example, we harvested over 2 million liters of rainwater and were able to recharge 540,000 liters of it. Additionally, some of the treated water is then made available to the community outside the factory. So access to clean water for our workers, their families, and the community at large is of course extremely important to their health and well-being. So when our workers' well-being is taken care of, we ensure less worker attrition, thereby less money is required to be invested to train the new workers, and a larger skilled workforce, and ultimately a more efficient and productive workforce, which positively impacts our bottom line. So the industry average worker turnover is about 10%, whereas IFL's is only 3%. And we attribute much of this to our social welfare projects. Sustainability initiatives have been a core part of our identity since we commenced operations. We were one of the country's first LEED Gold certified factories. This has allowed us to expand our business with an increasing number of partners and brands that share our vision. This has also given us a competitive edge in an arena where consumer demand for sustainable products is increasing, and of course, stricter legislation, such as the EU 2030 Climate and Energy Framework is being rolled out. Recently, there was a study published by the Wharton School of Business that stated that 62% of Gen Z shoppers prefer to buy from sustainable brands, and 73% are willing to pay more for sustainable products. So the trend in consumer behavior signifies a need for brands and suppliers to adapt in order to stay relevant.
Thank you. And having had the privilege of seeing the project the other day, it's really inspiring. But we need many more businesses to do the same. So how could similar investments be encouraged and scaled across other manufacturers?
So in addition to effluent management, manufacturers have to engage in water efficient investment. So this means purchasing and operating machinery that requires less water for wet processes and recycling as much of the treated wastewater as possible. For instance, they can invest in low liquor ratio dyeing machines. So these machines can reduce the amount of water required in dyeing from around 100 liters per kilo of fabric to 40 liters per kilo of fabric. So this means that they're also requiring less dyes and chemicals, which ultimately is reducing their production costs and improving profitability. Furthermore, the water used is largely from groundwater sources, which we know is quickly depleting. So by investing in equipment that uses less water, they're contributing to the long-term availability of an essential resource. This helps us to secure the sustainability of our industry and millions of jobs. That being said, the most important way forward for the industry is the adoption of zero liquid discharge, or ZLD mechanisms. This means that there will be absolutely no wastewater released into the environment, and all the effluent will be treated and recycled. This will have an enormous impact on groundwater depletion and environmental degradation, especially to marine life. However, the ZLD system is extremely expensive. And I believe currently in Bangladesh, there's only one factory that has been able to begin operating it. So in order for manufacturers to be able to eventually realize a future where ZLD systems become the norm, we need policy-level interventions. In India, for example, some states have introduced regulations requiring manufacturers in certain areas to use those ZLD systems, but they've also provided the financial support in terms of grants and subsidies. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashna. So we've heard some perspective from the business, the factory level. So let's go to Iqbal, who has the challenge of managing the risk and resilience of water challenges across the supply chain for Lindex. Iqbal, what innovative approaches can mitigate business risk from water challenges and improve resilience throughout apparel supply chains?
Okay, thank you, Emma. The first point is that Lindex, we are a business organization. So we see water risks as a business risks, specifically through supply chain disruption. So we, as a brand, systematically analyze the risks of water or water-related risks, and we identified several key areas. One of the most critical one is that water-related conflict, risks of unavailability of water, or what I can refer as that the water scarcity, regulatory and reputational risks are some of them. So we wanted to address those risks or take appropriate action to mitigate those risks in well advance. So one of those actions are like create secondary sources of water. The rainwater harvesting plant or the system that we initiated or piloted at Incredible Fashions Limited is a step towards to finding an alternative sources of water. It can simultaneously help to conserve the groundwater, and it also help to just create a cultural changes that not fully dependent on primary water sources. And our next course of action was to ensure access to clean water and sanitation for the worker, which Ashna clearly explained the benefit. I don't want to go for the benefit. Rather, our aim was to create an example to show that there are some responsibility with the worker to help them to get clean water and sanitation, which ultimately help our business, Lindex as a business. And also, we are in the process and it's continuously doing researches to find an innovative solution which require less water in the process, like waterless dyeing process, waterless printing process, recycling of water and wastewater, And there are ongoing researches going on to find a more innovative solution. Thank you.
Thank you. And we talked about the example that the WaterAid, Lindex, Incredible Fashions collaboration. How can clothing brands, factory owners, and technical solution providers collaborate to encourage sustainable water usage?
Thank you. Water is an universal resource. There are a lot of players with the water. So, the mitigating the challenges for an individual partner is quite impossible. It requires partnership from all parties, specifically the technology companies, technology suppliers. They are knowledge bank. They have the solution. The brands like Lindex, the fashion brands, we can promote this technology, help them to get the piloted those technology, to validate those technology, and then the factory owner, the manufacturers, they can use this technology. So, and it's an ongoing process. The technology don't come in a one day. A lot of innovations basically cannot succeed due to proper ground, to pilot it, to test it, and then scale it up. So the partnership is required with all parties to identify the innovative tech solutions which can save the water, which can create more the like water-free, or water-dependent production. So these types of innovations, when we will promote this as a brand, as a supplier, then there are new technology will come. New technology will, the more people will feel interested to innovate. So I can clearly see there are huge opportunity for partnership. Thank you.
Thank you. Finally, how does sustainable use by factories support your global policies on worker well-being and WASH?
Lindex, specifically Lindex water strategy are very much in line with SDG 6. So, access to clean water and sanitation is one of the prime area of SDG 6. And so, the supporting the workers to get access to clean water and sanitation is fully aligned with Lindex sustainability goal, and specifically water strategy. Thank you.
Fabulous. Thank you so much for that. So let's now talk a little bit about the bigger picture and about the future. So Prashun, what's the picture for water resources in Bangladesh looking forward 10 years? And why is sustainable water management so critical for business resilience?
Thank you very much. Hello, do you hear me? Yeah. Okay, so water resource is very essential because Bangladesh is a water-rich nation. We have water. Every year we have severity of floods. So we have water is not in extreme deficit, but yes, clean water is a deficit, right? So we have huge pressure on groundwater use for drinking purposes, basically through several millions of tube wells, which we are actually consuming water daily in the rural households. But on the other side, when we talk about the industrial use, it has increased radically, especially in the apparel sector, which I was never ever been that much involved in. But now hearing today, it's really giving me a severe impetus of learning more about it and understanding the mechanisms. Like in Ghazipur, in the local area, where you find huge amount of water abstraction for this sector, where people are abstracting water, and where the water quality itself is of paramount importance. So we talk about dyeing, and dyeing quality. It's not only dyeing, but even the dyeing and the fixation of the dye with the cotton fabric or different other artificial fabric. We heard in the morning about different types of fabrics, which were not nature-based fabrics, and also man-made artificial fabrics. So we need to understand these mechanistic methods of how these dyes are actually fixed into these clothes, so that you have a long-term sustainable production, so that we can enhance the quality. So quality enhancement from Bangladesh should be one of the my clear messages, of course, that how do we really improvise our learnings on groundwater hydrogeology and these aspects into embedded to produce that better quality water. So that's one aspect. Second aspect is, of course, we talk about, when we talk about the garment sector or this apparel sector, we always think about effluent treatment. What bothered me, I did a very small scale study myself during the past week. I found that influent water is also equally important, which nobody talks about. I would like to encourage that we should look into the influent water, because the paper which we have been looking into, we are talking about water treatment prior to the dyeing, putting that water inflow to the dyeing for dyeing purposes. So we need to understand those aspects of what are this. And then what happens after that influent treatment? Where does that treated water go? So that those issues need to be addressed. Does it really go to directly to the environmental recipient? Maybe high saline water or high salt concentration getting into the soils, leading to additional contaminations. Bangladesh, of course, you know that it is one of the topmost arsenic-prone areas. So all the groundwater abstracted has, in many cases, in 90% of cases, has high arsenic. So that is actually being put into the environmental recipients, and that's really one of the important aspects. The problem of high groundwater arsenic leading to food agricultural sector, so in the soils enrichment. So there are those type of things which we need to look forward and work in close collaboration with the apparel sector. Thank you for this.
Thank you. So, as you've heard, the challenges going forward are only getting more acute and more diverse. So, what are the key emerging enabling technologies and approaches that can be deployed at the scale and the speed that we need to have measurable impact on water resources?
Well, I think there are, what we see, as an academia, I see that there are, thousands of publications coming out, which means there are several researchers coming out on different removal techniques on different dyes. You talk about azo dyes, you talk about Congo red dye, you have, so you name it and you have it. So those type of things. So there are technologies, but the question now is what sort of technology can be scaled, and to what extent, and how they are being commercialized, or what you say, brought into practice in a way. So are we really comfortable with our existing techniques, or do we need improvements? And I think there is another aspect of understanding the use of membrane technology, which I would like to see, is it really feasible to have a membrane technology solution, because it's a huge amount of energy, and then the membrane effluents are even much higher. Concentrated effluents, where do we discharge them? So these are some of the questions. And then we also think about that is the recycling process itself. So my concern here is that can we really retain the water which we have abstracted from the ground into the dyeing system? Can we retrieve that water and put it to the next cycle? Because that's something which needs to be thought about. When you talk about ZLD, I was thinking about that. Why do we really waste that water and make into a thing? Instead of ZLD, can we really make it into a constant? We talk about circularity, cyclicity of that water. We try to consume so that we can reuse at least 75%. If you are not able to do 100%, 90%, I will still have an objective now to put 75% as a cutoff to start with. That we use 75% of water and then add on as we require in the future. So that way of treating this thing. So that's the probable way forward into this aspect.
Great, thank you. So we've had there are some technologies emerging or available for treatment and for reuse. We've heard there's a business imperative to adopt these technologies. There are still some barriers.
And one of the important technologies one can think about here is also the use of biochars and the modern technologies which are coming up. So,
there's lots of technologies. In fact, we could probably be here next week talking about technologies.
Yeah.
But for now, because we've only got a limited time, let's turn to look at the enabling environment or inhibiting environments of policies, and we've heard already today about the increasing regulatory burden that's emerging out of the EU particularly. So, Mustaviso, how can policy initiatives and regulations incentivize sustainable water usage practices in the apparel industry?
Thank you, Emma. First of all, I would say that water is a precious resource, and in other words, water is life. But people hardly recognize its importance. But the time has come to consider these resources in terms of climate change and depleting the groundwater. Now, if I consider how policy can be useful to use or to monitor the water resources, then I can say that in terms of apparel industry, I would say that there should be some standard regulation how apparel industry can use water in proper way, and what are the measures and what are the standards they will set to use the water in terms of groundwater issue, in terms of how they will. All I want to say is how they can use this water through their production process, and that uses of water could be in sustainable way. So there should be some regulation and a standard procedure which will be followed by the relevant authorities so that industry can use the water resources properly. So there should be some standard mechanism and compliance mechanism as well. And second thing, I would say that there should be regulation wastewater discharge in the apparel sector. It is very important because I think that there is some regulation, but there is no proper enforcement of regulation how apparel sector can discharge wastewater into the water bodies, into other water bodies or into groundwater. Because if we discharge this wastewater into the surface water and other water bodies, and those wastewater are not, I would say that if those water are not refined properly, and that could make environments more harmful. So how we can regulate this kind of things that should be thought out. And third, I would say that there should be advocacy with the government and other stakeholders, so that everybody should have a common understanding how water resources is important and how these resources could be used in the apparel sector. I think these are the three issues which can be useful in terms of policy regulation. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, what kind of bilateral development strategies and policies related to sustainable water use does the Embassy of Sweden propose that can be scaled towards the private and the RMG sector?
Thank you, Emma. In fact, Embassy of Sweden is working with different bilateral contribution with different UN organization, INGO, and even with governments on water issues. Now we are working with different organization on water issue that is very much traditional, how we can increase access to water, and how we can support the marginalized people to have access to the water. And there are other interventions which are related to increase the water infrastructure all over the country so that people might have the access to the water. But now the thing is how this kind of contribution can be supportive to help the apparel industry, because this working modality have some common understanding and methodology, and because I would say that through our works we are trying to come up with some water pricing modeling, so that people, based on their ability, they can access to the water. So this kind of methodology, how we can use and how we can support the industry to see how they can come up with some modeling process, price modeling, so that they can be careful to use the water resources, and I would say that. And other thing is kind of, because through our works we are involving with different stakeholders. So how we can do advocacy with different stakeholders so that these stakeholders can see how apparel sector can use water in a sustainable way. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. I think we are in the last moments, and I'm not sure if we've got enough technology to be able to do questions at this point. I'm just looking to see if anyone's waving a microphone so we could open the floor. Yes. Have you got a mic? There's one coming.
Hi, my name is Mudit from a company called Ensinga. First of all, congratulations on implementing such a wonderful water management system in Incredible Apparels. So the question what I have is, now other than a few early adapters and innovators in manufacturing have started implementing digitally capturing data, data-driven decisions, especially on sustainability. But the implementation towards the larger numbers is pretty slow, as we see, right? Like even for an example, manufacturers who have ETP plants, they have not been investing on flow meters to capturing these data digitally. And sometimes they capture these manually and that data doesn't get used anywhere else. Now, if you look at the investment, with a very small investment, this can be started as a journey, right? Like as one of the gentlemen mentioned, it's a roadmap which you're looking at. So as an example, less than $5,000, you should be able to start monitoring and looking at the data where you need to change and where you need to start the initiative. But other than the top few manufacturers, others have not taken that initiative simply because I felt the ROI cannot be justified in a proper way rather than the environmental impact. So is there anything which is just coming from a regulatory perspective on this, especially considering the groundwater lift, reconciliation on the ETP and of course water being gone into the water bodies?
He wants to pick that one up.
Thanks for your question. I think that automatically right now, collection of data is kind of being taken care of because as I mentioned, the EU regulations that are going to be implemented by 2030 require a lot of the suppliers to be doing a lot more data reporting around sustainability issues.
Let me just complete one aspect which is important, that each country has its own regulatory framework. So, but for especially when we talk about the apparel sector, I mean, there is still some room for further improvements, bringing in more, I mean, different aspects of, especially if I see right now, we have not only the apparel companies, because there's a huge private scale business, private sector involvement, not only the houses, I mean, even the private sectors in local scale who are actually involved in dyeing. I mean, we in the entire Southeast Asian region, notwithstanding only Bangladesh. So there are, I mean, Tirupur is one of the very important landmarks from the textile perspective. So if you have those learnings from Tamil Nadu, Tirupur, we see that this has been a long-term involvement and policy issues. But still, I mean, there are some important issues need to be taken, especially involving this private sector. Some more capacity building is also important, which is not practiced in today's context. So we need to bring in these aspects, especially when we talk about further improvements, bringing change to the system. We need to involve this private sector in a more involved manner so that they can work in integration with the national stakeholders, the government and other participants. Thank you.
I think that's our key to wrap up. Perfectly on time. Well, thank you everybody for your time today. Hopefully we've given you some ideas about how industry, INGOs, technology providers, and policymakers and academia can collaborate through advocacy and direct action towards more sustainable water management in the apparel sector. Thank you all.
Thank you to the moderator, the speaker, for a wonderful discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, we are really running out of time for the next session, so we are off for just 10 minutes of tea break. Hope to see you all at 4:15. Thank you.